Maybe he thought they would dissolve. Maybe he didn't want, you know what I mean? Maybe he thought they would not live, exist long enough to be found. Maybe he thought she'd stay down long enough so that he would get away with it. And maybe he thought she'd never surface. I'm pretty sure he thought she'd never surface. And maybe he didn't trust the metal. I don't know. Maybe he thought that was a better way to ground her.
Now, when the body was discovered, it was partially dismembered, right?
Yeah, it had disarticulated is the term that they use. She had lost most of her arms, legs, and head because they had been either destroyed by marine life or disarticulated from the anchors, because she was probably in about 40 feet of water, not shallow. I believe she was sunk at the Richmond Entrance Channel, and that's a whole other story we can talk about why I know that. And so she was down below the shipping channel, and there was probably a lot of activity above her. And then there was that big thunderstorm on the 12th, or the 11th or 12th of April, which dislodged that whole thing. And she came up. The baby was removed. Was the gas exploded the baby out of her body and floated that baby out first to Point Isabel, and then she was found within 12 hours of that.
Now, I'm still not clear, though. What was the manner of death? How did he kill her?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been anyway, because so much evidence was lost. I mean, he could have shot her. He could have, strangled her. He could have done any number of things that didn't leave any blood. He might have just drugged her and taken her out there and drowned her.
Yeah, strangled her. Yeah, you really don't know.
We don't know. There was no evidence to show how she was killed.
And do we think she was killed there in the house?
Well, I mean, she could have been. Every murder doesn't leave blood.
Right.
He could have suffocated her. He could have drugged her. He could have drugged her into unconsciousness, and he could have strangled her, and that wouldn't have left any marks. Or any blood. So, there's a lot of bloodless ways to kill people.
Now, prior to the night of the death or the murder, when did he buy the boat and do all that kind of stuff in advance?
He bought the boat like early in December, like the 9th or 10th, right around there. He also got a 2-day fishing license for the ocean. He got an ocean stamp. So he expected to need that license for 2 days. He probably bought it thinking, well, if I don't go this day or I don't go that day, I'm going to hedge my bet and have enough room for bad weather or something else. So he bought a 2-day ocean stamp for fishing. So in case he was seen, he would have, he wouldn't get a ticket or be suspicious. And he bought some gear that wasn't even really suitable for sturgeon, it turns out. But sorry, my phone's ringing.
That's okay.
He had planned to do this at least 2 weeks before.
Okay. 2 weeks, because that's when he bought the boat, and that's when he got the fishing license, and he bought this fishing gear.
Right.
Now, how long prior to that was he dating Amber Fry?
I think he met her in October. I have to look up. This has been a long time, but I think he met her, a couple months prior. And he was introduced to her by a mutual friend who met him at some kind of a trade show.
Right.
And she introduced him to Amber as a single guy, and Amber thought he was single. And he took her, he had this romantic weekend with her where he brought roses and chocolate-covered strawberries, and he had champagne. And so he was a real Casanova. And so she was swept off her feet, and he continued to visit her in Fresno. I think he went down there after Thanksgiving, as a matter of fact. I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure he did. So, he was courting her. And as you know, he mentioned to her that he lost his wife, and that later on he mentioned to her that, that he was going to be able to be free for her more often in January, that his work schedule would change. So he was setting her up for Laci to be gone and hoping maybe that, he would be free.
Now that's interesting because now were there any other women? Was he dating any other women?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah. I know that there were rumors that he, the National Enquirer presented a publication about him dating a transvestite named, what was her name? Victor. Victor was a male prostitute that dressed as a woman, and he claims that Scott Peterson patronized him. And I also had a reader, very avid reader, who told me that he worked in a bathhouse in Berkeley. So a gay man told me he worked in a bathhouse in Berkeley and that Peterson was a customer of a gay bathhouse in Berkeley.
Really?
Yeah. So the new rumor that came out during this whole this whole trial was that Peterson was actually a closet homosexual.
Now, but just now imagine now, because if he's this serious about Amber, that he's dating her, he's gonna kill, the wife dies, he kills the wife, and then he continues talking to her while he's on TV practically, at these
the vigils.
Yeah, vigils, right? Yeah, vigils is the word. So then he's planning to one day in the future, continue with her. If he did, she would have to find out sooner or later that his wife died that night, and all this. What was he thinking?
Well, first of all, he didn't expect Laci to ever be found. Okay, he could have just said she went missing and he was this poor, pathetic, feel sorry for me. Look at my wife went missing. Someone snatched her, and isn't this horrible? And then he'd wait it out. He'd wait it out till she was declared dead. He'd get her. Maybe he'd get the life insurance, which wasn't new. They'd had that for years. But he'd get the life insurance. Maybe he'd get her family to give him the, she was due to inherit some kind of trust when she turned 30. There was some money motive there. And also, he probably expected her to never resurface. I don't think he expected Amber to think that she was dead. I think that he'd hoped that they'd give up on the search after 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, like they usually do. I mean, Laci's case was pretty amazing that people kept looking for her and that she made, basically international news throughout this whole trial when, in fact, a lot of women go missing and you never hear about it, Ed.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I guess we could thank but Nancy Grace for that. Nancy Grace, love her or hate her, at least she did bring some attention to this kind of stuff. But my point was, okay, here I am. I'm a single guy, right? And if I'm dating a girl and I'm married and I'm dating a girl, whether I get caught for the murder or not, that sooner or later my new girlfriend is going to find out that, hey, I was married when we were going out. You know what I mean? When we first started dating, I was married. Sooner or later, that's around the corner, no matter what. But I guess Scott doesn't think that far ahead,
Well, Scott doesn't have your personality yet. He doesn't have a conscience, okay? Yeah. My theory about him is that, one of the things that drew me to the case, and I'm not drawn to every single case out there. I don't have a lot of time, but I was drawn to the Scott Peterson case because he reminded me of my ex-husband, who was a very narcissistic, kind of guy who really just used people. I don't think he was ever serious about Amber. She was just the attention du jour. She was just the new attention, the new kind of, she gave him a lot of time and adulation and attention and love and, sex, whatever. And he wasn't planning to stick around with her. He was going to discard her like he discards everything else. She was not in there for the long run. He was just using her. She was just somebody he could, get a little bit of attention from. She was an easy person to be around. She was in Fresno. He traveled to Fresno a lot. I mean, she was just a port in a storm. And I don't think it was a serious relationship. And I definitely think there was no love spin here. He didn't kill Laci for Amber. He was going to kill her regardless. It had nothing to do with Amber. She was just a convenient little, attention, girlfriend, whatever, some kind of, fix for him. It was a narcissistic supply and nothing more.
Well, then why wouldn't he stop calling her after the TV cameras were around? Like, that's the first thing I would do.
Because he didn't have any friends.
Oh, okay.
He didn't have any friends. She was the only person who would talk to him. I think, she was the only person who he thought cared about him or would talk to him or had no preconceived notions about him. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of is that he needed some kind of attention. He needed somebody to talk to because God knows nobody else would talk to him, and his parents were, he's not going to call his parents.
Right. Oh, no, that's a good question now. You think the parents really believed he's innocent the whole time?
His parents,
Yeah.
yes.
Really?
Absolutely. They think that the Modesto police had tunnel vision. They think Scott was framed. They think these gruesome things like someone took the body to the bay to frame him, which is ridiculous. They think that Laci was alive on the 24th, and they've spent a lot of money and time trying to defend that position. And whether they're in denial or whether they're, just defending their own reputations or whatever it is, I do believe they think he didn't do it.
And what about Scott's brother, that one who seemed a little slow? Is he still around? What's he doing for a living?
I don't know what John Peterson's up to. I haven't seen anything about him in years and years, and he was always kind of the black sheep of the family.
Yeah, he seemed a little off. Now, what before he got arrested? He knew he was going to be arrested, and that's why because he was packed up. He had camping equipment and stuff like that. Tell us about that.
Well, I don't know what he knew. We knew where he was before the Modesto police did, which was really funny because back on my blog during April, before the body surfaced, I had friends, or not friends, but people who commented on my blog who lived in San Diego, and they told me he was over at Ann Bird's adopted parents' house, who lived in San Diego. So he was down at his sister, his half-sister's parents' house in La Jolla, or down there in, one of those suburbs of San Diego, hiding out down there. And we knew about where he was before Modesto knew where he was. And the only time they found out where he was when he made a phone call. And he made a phone call from one of the cell phones that they had, that they were tapping or surveilling, and they found him down there. But we knew he was down there days before the police did. And maybe they read my blog. Who knows that they found out he was down there. But he, by that time, had gotten a car from his mother, that Mercedes that he'd got. He had his brother's driver's license. He had a whole bunch of cash, camping equipment, survival gear, Viagra, which was hilarious. And, all that stuff, he was ready to bolt. I mean, I don't know how he just didn't go by then, but maybe his parents were saying this is just in case, or he was pretty close to leaving.
Yeah, he'd even dyed his hair like orange, right?
Yeah, and he had that weird beard. Yeah, he still looked like him though. He didn't look any different, just stupider.
Yeah, okay. Now, what was the name of your blog again? It was called
Pardon me?
The name of your blog again. What was it called again?
Oh, Observations of a Misfit.
Right. Now, is that still around?
Oh, no. I had to, I stopped blogging around 2007 because my children at the time, when I was doing the Peterson case, they were really young. I had a 2-year-old son and who's now 17, and I had a 6-year-old daughter. But then, things got too busy for me to devote that much time on it. So things after Peterson was arrested, I was still doing other cases. We blogged about the Michael Peterson case, in Durham, and he just got out of prison.
Right.
He got that plea that that where you were still guilty but we'll let you out.
Alfred.
The same one, the West Memphis.
Yeah. Alfred plea, yeah.
Exactly. Thank you. And then we were also doing. We did the we did a little bit about Natalie Holloway, who now, as I read recently, may have been discovered. Her body may have been discovered in Aruba. Who knows? We also did a lot of spousal murder cases, so it wasn't the only case that we were following. Once Peterson was pretty much convicted and then later on sentenced, we were following other cases for a few years, and then we just kind of disbanded out of, just how those things are. After a while, people get busy. And then Facebook came along and, other things came along to compete with blogs, and so I kind of lost my audience. But no big deal. I still made lots of friends. I have friends all over the country and in some other parts of the world who were, followers of the blog and contributors. And we used to have misfit meetings. I'd go to California or New York or Minnesota or Texas, and I would meet readers, and we'd all have a big party and get together. So it was really fun.
Yeah, I'm still in touch with some Court TV people too. And it's interesting, too, because I had an 18-year-old daughter, 18-month-old daughter at the same time. So when you mention that, my kid was around the same age. She's 17 now. She's going to be 17 November. So it's the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now,
yeah, my son's a senior in high school right now. So at the time, he was 2, 3,